everybody. Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. This is today's regular episode of the pod. Now, I did another episode earlier today. It was a silent date update. If you're following along with the silent date guy storyline, by all means, go back and listen. It is the episode right before this one in your podcast feed. And if you want the whole backstory on silent date guy, he's a good friend of mine. I've known him for a while, and I'm real happy for how things are going in his new relationship. But there's a lot of stops and starts. There's a couple of twists and turns in there, and he's living his best life. If you want to hear the whole story, then go back through the archives. About 6-7 months worth, there is a couple of episodes that are specifically marked silent date updates. Listen to those. You'll be completely caught up. Now, in this episode, regular one, and there's a lot to talk about. You're going to hear from that son of a bitch, Tiff Macklem. Tiff Macklem is the governor of the Bank of Canada. Tiff is also the guy who told everybody interest rates will remain low not that long ago. And then he went nuts raising people's interest rates. I think he is solely responsible for a lot of the suffering that the middle class is going through right now. Tiff Macklem and those interest rates have caused chaos in the middle class. And he doesn't get it. And nor does he care, because he lives in an ivory tower and he doesn't have to worry about us common folk. He just has to do what makes his banker buddies rich. And by and large, he seems to be doing that. You're also going to hear from Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who had a lot to say during a news conference yesterday. You know, Doug Ford is making a reputation for hating Donald Trump. It's pretty remarkable how much Doug acts like Donald Trump, though. And I'm going to give you the latest example when I get to that audio. There's a few other things I want to play, too. And I want to start off with this. There has been a narrative that has been out there and forming for years now about climate change. And I'm not going to sit here and say that climate change isn't real. The climate is changing, but we can certainly debate why that's happening and if we can do anything about it. Well, some people, mainly the rich, the elites, those who've got enough money to invest into green initiatives, really want us to be afraid of climate change. They want us to change everything that we've known and done for years and do it their way, which also makes them rich. They want us to take all the oil and gas and things like that and leave it in the ground and revert instead to things like windmills and solar panels. And a lot of the folks who are pushing this green narrative are getting wealthy off of it, not the least of which one of the top climate zealots is Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft. Bill did an unbelievable interview just the other day. He was on CNBC, and Bill made a startling admission. Please listen to this very carefully. This is important.
But economics works there.
When the climate activists who have been very supportive of what you've done, and you've been very supportive of what they've done, read this. And if Greta Thunberg is reading this and saying to herself, my goodness, he seems like he is reversing himself, what would you tell her?
I'd say, wasn't the goal here to improve human lives? And shouldn't we, in our awareness of how little generosity there is to help, measure, should we get them a measles vaccine or should we do some climate related activity? And if we stop funding all vaccines and that, saved you 0.1 degree, would that be a smart trade-off? That's the kind of question we have to ask. So I'm a climate activist, but I'm also a child survival activist.
That's just a little bit. Bill Gates is basically saying the climate emergency that some in the media and the global elites have tried to push on us, trying to make us change our entire way of lives. They really want us to be eating bugs soon because that's more sustainable than eating meat and things like that. These people are really into this stuff, and again, they make a lot of money off of it. That's Bill Gates saying, well, there's other things more important. He's acknowledging there is no climate emergency. If we have to prioritize spending, climate should not be what we spend our money on. That's coming from Bill Gates. The Bill Gates, basically declaring there is no climate emergency. There's other things that we got to worry about. And I guess maybe he intends to make the rest of his money off of vaccines instead of off of the Green New Deal. I don't care as long as he stays out of my life and stops influencing governments to do radical, crazy things in the name of climate change. Feel free to go back and watch that whole thing if you want to. It is on CNBC's YouTube page. That was just a little bit of it. Again, before I get to the content, there's a couple things I want to play. This is the next one. Every country, basically, has a national anthem. In Canada, ours is O Canada. And at the World Series in Los Angeles, they seem to really be struggling to find good, competent, talented people to represent our nation and sing our national anthem. The other night, they had J.P. Sachs. Completely useless. Just an awful, gut-wrenching performance, and not in a good way. It was terrible. And he changed the words. Something that should never happen. It's disrespectful to change the words to an anthem. And he got a lot of backlash, a ton. You'd think that future anthem singers would have learned from JP's mistake and not messed with our national anthem. But last night, Game 5, Dodger Stadium, I guess the best they could do was Rufus Wainwright. Yikes. He's not even a great singer. They want him to represent Canada and sing the anthem? Well, he did. And he, too, changed the words. Listen to this.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love that only us command, car ton bras.
Disgraceful. Let me put it to you this way. Forget the message. You know, when J.P. Sachs sung it, he did the Our Home on Native Land. Rufus Wainwright, that only we command. Basically, I'm paraphrasing that sad excuse for a national anthem rendition. Imagine the outrage if someone changed the words to the Star Spangled Banner. There would be rioting in America if somebody dared to mess with their anthem. And I don't get that kind of passion from Canadians. And I don't know if we're just not patriotic or if we're not paying attention or we don't know that we can, but we should be outraged at that. It's disrespectful to change the words to the national anthem. If we agree as a country, the words need to be changed. That should go through Parliament. Law should be passed and we go from there. But to just arbitrarily change our anthem so recklessly, like he did there on the World Series stage, it's disgraceful. So here's what I'm going to propose. There should be serious consequences for anybody who messes with our national anthem, at home or abroad. Rufus Wainwright should not be able to tap into funds like Factor and SoCan and things like that and get money. Because a lot of people in the entertainment industry have a lot of different funds they can tap into. How about if you disrespect our anthem, you're not eligible for any more funding? None. You're cut off. You want to make a music video? Fund it yourself. You're not going to get any music from Telefilm and all the other different organizations that hand out money to artists. No more. You should be completely cut off. And let's stop messing with the anthem. Let's be proud of what we've got. Sing the anthem the way it was meant to be sung. And if we, as a nation, agree that the words need to be changed, then we'll change the words. Officially. This playing around with the anthem stuff has got to stop. Rufus Wainwright, it was a joke to even have him there. Not talented. J.P. Sachs, even less than. Let's stop screwing around here. Let's get real talented, proud Canadians singing our anthem. And let's, at a time when we're supposed to be the most patriotic we've ever been, let's actually do that. It's disgraceful what that guy did. I'm going to move on here. I'd love to play some audio for you from the World Series. What a game last night from Trey Savage. Holy cow. You know, I know people make a big deal of the fact that he's only 22 years old, and that is amazing that at 22 years old, he is as composed as he is. But at 22 years old, he is pitching like a Cy Young veteran. It is unbelievable the way he is getting that ball across the plate and completely turning around Dodgers batters. And he's only making a minuscule amount of money because because he was in the minors before the Jays brought him up. I think the Jays have known for a while he was going to pitch in the playoffs and in the World Series if they made it that far. But he's still making that entry-level money. He's not getting paid yet. Nothing like some of the other guys on the team, like Bo Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and the list goes on. Trey Savage is making pennies on the dollar compared to what they're making. And now he's joking about it a little bit. Listen to this.
The way baseball structure, salary structure is, you really made like a little bit of money for the three outings you made in the major leagues. But it's going towards the future. It's all building, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, this playoff paycheck is going to be nice whenever it hits. So,
love to hear him joking about it. He's going to get paid. Don't feel bad for Trey. He will eventually get paid, and man, oh man, it is going to be a huge, huge payday. One more. Let's play Jays manager John Schneider talking about how incredible Trey Savage was. He has set a record for rookie strikeouts. He said he struck out 12 batters last night. 12 Dodger batters, including Shohei Ohtani. John Schneider.
he was pretty good. Historic stuff. You know what I mean? When you talk about that stage and his numbers, getting ahead of a lot of hitters, tons of swing and miss. You know, it's one thing to be in the zone, and it's another thing to be in the zone and get some swing and miss. So slider and split were electric. You know, I said it before the game. It's a different pitcher when he has his stuff. You know, game one didn't have a feel for his split. So kind of blown away at what he did.
And don't be at all surprised if you see him back coming out of the bullpen in game 6 or 7. They need him, and the Jays are close. One win away from winning the 2025 World Series. It is such a great atmosphere in Toronto. Wherever you're listening to me from, you should know that here in Southern Ontario, it is a vibe right now, and I love it. Go Jays, go. Game 6 tomorrow night. I have to think, by the way, that when Game 6 is happening on Halloween and it's an 8 o'clock start, it's going to be an early end to trick-or-treating tomorrow. I'm sorry, kids. I hate to have to tell you this, but it really seems like a lot of people are going to be turning off the porch lights around 8 o'clock, closing the door, and throwing the ball game on. So get that trick-or-treating done early tomorrow and have yourselves a great time. I'll talk a little more about Halloween tomorrow. Tomorrow is also a listener DM episode. I've got some good ones in so far. If you want to add to the list, DM me at Scott Fox On Air. Now, let's get to that son of a bitch, Tiff Macklem. Yesterday, the Bank of Canada announced they were cutting interest rates another quarter point. Now, this is weird because when Tiff Macklem told us interest rates would remain low for the foreseeable future, and some of us took out mortgages based on his word, we were shocked when he started raising interest rates like an animal. And he said he had to do it to tame inflation. And the whole strategy that son of a bitch employs is this. He's really stupid. He thinks that if he takes all the excess money out of the pockets and bank accounts of the middle class, then the middle class won't be able to go out and buy things, which bids up the price, and that's what leads to inflation. Think about how moronic that is. Well, we just have to bankrupt everybody so that nobody can shop. That's the way to solve inflation. Right now, there's too many people with too much money, and we got to take it all away from them because they can't spend for themselves. They can't use their own brains and determine what they want versus need, and they're buying too much stuff, and that's great for businesses, but not good for inflation, so just take all the money out of the middle class's pocket. That was the strategy. And every time inflation was up, they either had to raise interest rates again or keep them at elevated rates to try and tame inflation. Make sure that the middle class is broke. That was his goal for years now, to bankrupt the middle class. People lost their homes, and that prick doesn't care. He has no heart whatsoever. I think we should get rid of the central bank altogether. If it were up to me, that's what we would do. I have no time for these bankers that make these reckless decisions as wealthy people, but don't for a second consider the consequences of what it means for real people and real families in the middle class on the ground. And Tiff does not care. Well, yesterday, even though for years he's been telling us, well, when inflation's up, we got to raise interest rates. Inflation was up in September, but he lowered interest rates. So it can be done. Now, in fairness here, the reason he's lowering interest rates is because the Bank of Canada's forecast for our future is extremely bleak. This guy is dry. I'll tell you that now. I admit it. He's hard to listen to and he's stupid. But I'm going to play some extended clips here of Tiff Macklem laying out a case for why they would lower interest rates when inflation is high and how bad things are about to get here in Canada. This is the governor of the Bank of Canada.
Thank you, Paul, and good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here with the Senior Deputy Governor to discuss our monetary policy decision and our outlook for the Canadian economy. Today, the bank lowered the policy interest rate a further 25 basis points, bringing it to 2.25%. This was our second straight cut and reflects ongoing weakness in the economy and contained inflationary pressures. Today, we also published our outlook for the Canadian economy. Putting those two things together, we have four main messages. First, U.S. tariffs and trade uncertainty have weakened the Canadian economy. We expect very modest growth through the rest of the year, with some pickup in 2026. Second, while this weakness is restraining price increases, the trade conflict is also adding costs for many businesses, putting upward pressure on inflation. We expect these opposing forces to roughly offset, keeping inflation close to the 2% target. And third, to support the economy through this period of adjustment, we have lowered our policy rate by 50 basis points over the last two meetings and by 100 basis points since the start of the year. Finally, the weakness we're seeing in the Canadian economy is more than a cyclical downturn. It's also a structural adjustment. The U.S. trade conflict has diminished Canada's economic prospects. The structural damage caused by tariffs is reducing the productive capacity of the economy, and it's adding costs. This limits the ability of monetary policy to boost demand while maintaining low inflation.
Let's unpack a little bit of what he just said there. Things are not good. Things are so bad that he had to lower interest rates even though inflation was up. He's forecasting extremely modest growth, if any, this year. Maybe a small uptick next year. He's blaming it on tariffs. I'm going to think of it a different way. He says tariffs are doing this, and while tariffs are certainly impacting some things, I don't think that explains all of the issues here. Uncertainty was the other word he used, and I think that's probably the only one he should have used. You see, there's a lot of businesses that don't know what's going on. They don't know if Canada is going to be around or if we're going to survive this. They don't know if we will eventually become the 51st state. They don't know if Mark Carney can manage the economy the way you would expect a prime minister and former central banker to do. They're worried. Right now, America seems to be offering a little more certainty. You know what you're going to get. It's also very expensive to do business in Canada. Much more expensive than in America. We don't have a great business climate right now. It's pretty scary. Just yesterday, I played you a clip of Lisa Raitt, former member of parliament, former shadow deputy prime minister. Lisa was talking about the amount of Canadian businesses that are considering moving to America because they've got more certainty and because the costs are basically fixed compared to here in Canada. The uncertainty, because we don't have a deal yet with America, is mainly what's fueling that. Here's a little bit more of Governor Macklem.
It's now been more than 6 months since we have been living with U.S. tariffs. And while U.S. trade policy remains unpredictable, its impacts are becoming clearer. So let me expand on what we're seeing in the economy and how that played into our deliberations. While the global economy has been resilient to the rise in U.S. tariffs and increased uncertainty, the impacts are becoming more evident. Trade relationships are being reconfigured, and uncertainty is dampening investment in many countries. In Canada, the impacts of U.S. trade policy are already clearly evident. GDP contracted 1.6% in the second quarter as tariffs and uncertainty reduced exports and business investment. U.S. trade actions are having severe effects on targeted sectors, including autos, steel, aluminum, and lumber. At the same time, household spending was resilient in the second quarter, with strong consumer spending and a pickup in residential investment. The labor market is soft. Employment gains in September followed 2 months of sizable losses. Job losses have been concentrated in trade-sensitive sectors, and hiring has been weak across the economy. The unemployment rate remained at 7.1% in September, and wage growth has slowed. In the second half of this year, GDP growth is expected to resume, but remain weak, averaging only 0.75%. It should then pick up on a quarterly basis in 2026 as exports and investment recover to average about 1.5% in 2027. This implies excess supply is only taken up gradually. Even as growth recovers, the entire path for GDP growth is lower than before the shift in U.S. trade policy. By the end of 2026, the level of GDP is about 1.5% lower than forecast in January. About half this downward revision reflects lost capacity as a result of the trade disruption. The other half is due to weaker demand. Inflation was 2.4% in September, slightly higher than the bank had anticipated. The bank's preferred measures of core inflation have been sticky, around 3%, but upward momentum has dissipated. Looking at a broader range of indicators, underlying inflation looks to be around 2.5%. The bank expects inflationary pressures to ease in the months ahead and CPI to remain near 2% over the projection horizon.
Does that sound anything like the federal Liberals have been saying in Ottawa? Anything like it? Talking about having the strongest economy in the G7. Talking about how great everything is. That's what they've been telling us in Ottawa. All the experts say we're going to be great and we're going to have this thriving economy leading the G7 in growth. Nothing in what Governor Macklem said there is consistent with what the federal government has been telling us. While they've been painting this rosy picture and shaming anyone who disagrees, that's the real number from the Bank of Canada. Now, I don't agree with Governor Macklem on a lot of that. He's blaming a lot of it on tariffs. I thought we had the best tariff deal with America in the world. 85% of the goods are not tariffed. Some of them only just started getting tariffed. There's no way it's tariffs that are doing all of this. Inflation is an issue, and interest rates are an issue. Has it ever occurred to Tiff that maybe the reason inflation is as high as it is because the cost of housing is so high, which is 100% his fault because he raised the interest rates? Did that ever occur to him? And that was after he said interest rates would remain low. It looks bleak here, friends. It looks bleak. When the Bank of Canada walks away from an opportunity to raise our interest rates again, that should be a whoa moment for everybody. Let's get to some of the Q&A with Governor Macklem.
We have the policy rate only at the lower end of kind of the neutral range. It's not in deeply stimulative territory, and yet your projection for the economic outlook is pretty bad. It's pretty weak. And you talk about the kind of constraints on monetary policy in stimulating the economy when we're going through this kind of structural shift. Can you unpack that a little bit? Why are we not talking about more stimulus from the Bank of Canada when we are talking about a very weak economic outlook and one that, you know, there's going to be permanent scarring from the U.S. trade policy?
Well, first point, Mark, is we're now at the lower end of our range of neutral. So monetary policy is providing some stimulus. But as I tried to outline in my opening remarks, the role of monetary policy in the current situation is somewhat limited. You know, what we're going through is not just a cyclical downturn. And what do I mean by cyclical? Cyclical means, you know, you go down and you come back up. You go back to your previous trend path. It's not just a cyclical downturn. Part of it is a cyclical downturn. I mean, demand for our products, particularly in the United States, is lower. And there's a cyclical element to that. But part of it is structural. The the U.S. has swerved to protectionism. It's harder to do business with the United States. That has destroyed some of the capacity in this country. It's also adding costs. Businesses are looking for new markets. They're reconfiguring their supply chains. That adds costs. So, the fact that this is partly structural and the fact that it's adding costs limits the ability of, or limits the role of monetary policy in boosting demand while keeping inflation low. So, I mean, just to sort of unpack that a little bit more for you, what can monetary policy do? Well, first of all, monetary policy, let me start with what it can't do. I mean, monetary policy can't target specific sectors. It can't target the hard-hit sectors, aluminum, steel, autos. It can't help companies find new markets. It can't help companies reconfigure their supply chains. What it can do is it can try to mitigate the spillovers from the hard-hit sectors to the rest of the economy. And it can try and help the economy adjust to this structural change.
He's so stupid. Listen, friends, it's bad. It's really, really bad. That is Governor Macklem failing to explain exactly what his job is and what his role in trying to help Canada is right now. However, it doesn't change the fact that his assessment, partially from StatsCan, is very, very bad. I've been saying for a long time, StatsCan has been giving the Bank of Canada cover to keep interest rates high. I do not believe those inflation numbers the way they put them out every single month. But the Bank of Canada uses it, and they've kept interest rates high for years and made bankers extremely wealthy off of the back of the middle class. They've been doing that for years now. But now we are so screwed that there's not really much more money to take. And there's not really many more options for the Bank of Canada. There's not many more things that they can do with their monetary policy. You know what I didn't hear there from Governor Macklem? I didn't hear any dissent. Governor Macklem here had an opportunity, since he was calling out America nonstop, to point out our own government did this to us by printing so much money. They've left our economy in shambles. I didn't hear Governor Macklem criticizing his boss, Mark Carney, or Francois-Philippe Champagne there, and I don't understand why. That is a major, major issue. Government policy. There's one more thing I want to play from this mess here before I move on to Premier Ford. Governor Macklem talking about how we as Canadians, this is how bad it is, need to prepare ourselves for a lower standard of life.
And unfortunately, what that means is that unless something else changes, our incomes will be lower than they otherwise would have been. They'll grow, but they'll grow along a lower. This was the old path. Now there's a new path, which is below the old path. There are things the country can do to try to bend that curve up, but those aren't things monetary policy can do. These are more structural changes. I mean, fundamentally, as a senior deputy governor has hammered many times, we need to get our productivity growth up. And if we can do that as a country, we can bend that curve up. So, I mean, I think what's most concerning is that unless we change some other things, our standard of living as a country, Canadians, is going to be lower than it otherwise would have been.
Man, what do you say after something like that, right? Things are so bad, our country has been so mismanaged, and we are so unprepared to deal with any trade adversity like we're dealing with America now. And since we're not going to do a deal anyway, me, you, your family, my family, all of our friends, need to prepare ourselves for a lower standard of life in Canada if we don't change course. Is that enough to wake people up, do you think? All those people that had trivial reasons in the last election for voting the way they did. well, I think the country's doing terrible, but I don't like the alternative. I don't like that guy. I don't like the way his wife smirks. I don't like his hair. I don't like the way he talks. I like the guy who wants to be elbows up and take on Trump. Can we admit now that we made an emotional decision in the spring that probably wasn't all that practical? If we go to an election in the next couple of weeks, which all indications are that we're going to, do you think those people who had all of those trivial objections will finally be able to say, I don't like that guy. I don't like his hair. I don't like his wife. I don't like that he's a conservative. I don't like that he's kind of like Donald Trump. I don't like anything about that guy. But I do like his policies, and his policies are what this country needs. And I will hold my nose, and I will vote for good policy and not vote on emotion on what I don't like. I will not be brainwashed by the mainstream media again into thinking there's a crisis that doesn't exist to try and get somebody elected. Do you think people are ready to make a change now? If we go to the polls in a couple of weeks, do you think a few tens of thousands of Canadians, that's all that it would take to change to a conservative majority government? Do you think then people will be able to say, even though they don't like Pierre, even though they don't like the way he talks, they like his policy, and they know, everybody knows, his way forward is the better way forward? Do you think people will finally be able to say, I'm done voting Liberal? I've seen what happened over the last 10 years. I've now heard it from the Bank of Canada. Now I'm ready to make a change. And even though I don't like that guy, his policy is the way to fix Canada. I guess it remains to be seen. We don't know if we're having an election. If we do, a lot's on the line this time, guys. That was from the Bank of Canada. It is bad. One more thing I want to fit into this episode is Ontario Premier Doug Ford. I mentioned before that Doug does a lot of things that are very, very Trumpish. You know, I mean, the way he's attacking businesses, you're either going to set up your business in Ontario or we'll screw you as hard as you can, as we can. Stellantis, screw you. Crown Royal, I'm going to dump it. He goes after people that don't agree with him. And that's a very Donald Trump thing to do. I think everybody agrees. That's what Donald Trump is doing in America. You either set up in America or we'll screw you. Yesterday, Doug did a signing ceremony with some Indigenous leaders. That's great. We have to partner with our Indigenous leaders and our Indigenous communities across Canada. We need buy-in. We need them to support what we need to do as a country. It was a signing ceremony like you would see at the White House. Special pens made. Here, keep the pen. That's something that Donald Trump does all the time. When he signs an executive order or when he does a signing thing, the pens, they all come in a special box, their own box, and he hands out the pens that he signed with. Doug Ford did something very, very similar yesterday, and it just reminded me again how much he is like Donald Trump. I don't see it any other way. I mean, there's just so many similarities, and I don't know if anyone else has noticed that, but it sticks on me. Let's get to some of the Q&A after that signing ceremony. This is Premier Doug Ford talking about a lot of different things.
I have two questions for the Premier. Moira Welsh, Toronto Star.
Yes.
My first question is, you've spoken about the benefits to the communities,
yes,
but you've also talked about the battle and the tariffs. A lot of people have said that by the time that mining can actually occur in the Ring of Fire, President Donald Trump will be long gone from office. And so what's your timeline around this? You've spoken about the battle, the need to act urgently. What's the timeline to get this moving forward?
Well, before I pass it over to Minister Rickford, we have to start. And this is a starting line right now, and this is going to bring opportunities in the future. And we're going to go as quickly as possible with our partners at Webequie First Nations, which I absolutely love, think the world of. And we're going to change their children's lives, as I said, and grandchildren's. But we have to start somewhere, and we have to move as quickly as possible. We need to create opportunities and jobs there as well. It's going to, again, change your lives, but we have to move and move quick. Let's get federal government out of the way. The Prime Minister assured me that it's going to be one project, one process, and we can move forward on that. So I'm telling you, this is the most historic day, the beginning of an incredible future for everyone. the foundation of everything, supporting our First Nation communities, supporting healthcare and supporting education and infrastructure is one thing. And the chief knows it's our economy. Our economy pays for everything, and this is pivotal to our economy. And we don't have to worry about Donald Trump years down the road, because he's not going to be there in 3 years. And, as your last reporter up, years down the road, I'll be pushing up tulips. But it's for the future of our children in First Nations and the future of our province and our country.
Is the Globe and Mail has a piece that speaks about Ambassador Hoekstra, to use a blunt phrase, cursing out your Ontario representative in the United States at a meeting. What do you say to that? This was related to your advertisement related to Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
What's your response to Ambassador Hoekstra's words?
Come on, Ambassador. He's a guy. You know something? I like him. Pete, you got to call Dave up and apologize. It's simple. The cheese slipped off the cracker. I get it. You're ticked off. But call the guy up because you're a good guy, and Dave's my champion. The guy is just instrumental in these trade deals down in Washington. And, something people get hot. They get heated. I get heated sometimes. But just call the guy up and bury the hatchet, because the ambassador's a good guy, actually. I love Dave. I like the ambassador, so he knows what to do. Come on, Pete, you've been around for before Moses. Call the guy up and apologize. Let's start getting back on track.
Wow, lots to unpack there with Premier Ford. Number one, he did not give a timeline for when we are going to be mining the Ring of Fire. I'll also point out that this is something that could have been done a long, long, long time ago. We didn't need Donald Trump to get elected to a second term to figure out that the Ring of Fire is full of prosperity for First Nations communities and for all of Ontario and all of Canada. We didn't need Donald Trump to point that out. We've always known it. There was never a will to do it. I don't understand why. Now there is a will, and he won't say how long it'll take until we're actually mining the Ring of Fire. Why? Is it because it is so far in the future that it is not going to impact us right now? We've got all these TV commercials running. Mine the Ring of Fire. And in my lifetime, I don't know if it's ever going to get accomplished. Maybe if we'd started 20 years ago, we'd be having a different conversation. We would just laugh that Donald Trump doesn't want to do business with Canada. Okay, fine. We got lots of customers. But we're not in that situation. Nothing got done. We can't even say when it will be ready to start mining and start producing income for the First Nations communities and for the rest of Ontario and Canada. Now, as for the second question there from that reporter from the Toronto Star, I believe it was, I would point out to the Toronto Star that it is Ronald Reagan, not Donald Reagan. Doug Ford is encouraging the American ambassador to Canada to apologize for cursing out one of Doug's friends. And I don't know what trade deals in Washington he was doing, because I'm not aware of any trade deals down in Washington that have actually been done. But Doug seems to really like the guy that got chewed out by the American ambassador. He also says the cheese slipped off the cracker. Doug loves to use that one. He's right. People are hot. And Pete Hoekstra probably got a real earful from Donald Trump and other officials at the White House. He was probably told, you tell those people in Ontario, we're not happy. Message relayed. Is it Doug Ford's job to get involved here? I don't know why he's spending a second of time trying to mediate a dispute with the American ambassador that had nothing to do with Doug. I have no idea why he's focusing on that. I mean, if he's got extra time in the day, I'd like to talk about autism funding. I'd like to talk about healthcare. I'd like to talk about schools and transit and things like that. I'd like to talk about buying back the 407, maybe pausing the 413. Maybe we skip this stupid tunnel that he wants to build under the 401. Maybe there's some other things that need to be addressed before Doug starts playing peacemaker with two guys that are working on something that really shouldn't involve him. I don't know why that came up.
Jean-Luc Douda with Radio-Canada. The other day at Darlington, we asked the Prime Minister if he would consider putting the 401 tunnel under the big national project. He didn't seem too enthused about that. Do you think he would go for this one for the second round, the Ring of Fire road projects?
Well, I hope so. If he wants to work and it's costing us $56 billion a year, the congestion in Toronto and the GTA, $56 billion a year. Our building's been off the 401 for, 50 years, and it's packed. You drive by the 401 at 11 o'clock, it's packed. Like, where's everyone going? So, it's the busiest highway in North America. What do? You build an extension. And our extension is underground. And we're going to do something that no one in the world has ever done. Just because it hasn't been done, it doesn't mean we can't do it. And we're going to get it done. And I'm encouraging the federal government to be part of that, because it's going to be incredible what we're building. 3-level tunnel, transit, going east, going west. It's going to be pretty spectacular. So I strongly suggest and hope the federal government will be on board, but we're doing it either way.
It's an interesting one because Doug is very aware that the 401 is at capacity. But what he's talking about is a solution that we will not see maybe even in our lifetime. It's at least 25 years away. That's not going to do anything for this $56 billion a year that Doug is so concerned about right now. There's an obvious solution here. Doug is, and God bless him, we will eventually need something. Maybe that tunnel is the right solution, and maybe right now is the time to start it. But we need a solution now. If we're losing that many billions a year, then it makes zero sense that Doug hasn't annexed the 407 ETR, Express Toll Route, and put it back in taxpayer hands. No sense at all. If we're losing $56 billion a year, Doug, how much would it cost to buy back the 407? Why will nobody answer that question? Don't tell me it's not for sale. Everything's for sale. It's also ours. Annex it. Take back the 407. Doug Ford has the ability to immediately alleviate some of the pressure on the 401 by buying back the 407. This is a highway that in some directions or some areas, it's 6 lanes in each direction, but it costs a fortune to use it. It's out of reach and unaffordable for the vast majority of people. This is a highway where you can drive 40 kilometers and get a bill for $27. Why don't we just buy it back? Make it low toll, like reasonable, affordable tolls, consistent with other tolls across North America. Affordable, so that people can use it. It's not free, but low toll. Until we've recouped some of the money we spent to buy it back. And apparently we'll save $56 billion a year. That's Doug Ford's number. It makes no sense to not buy it back. Will we eventually need the 413? Yeah, probably. We can start that and have it going and under construction while people are moving around on the 407. But it starts with buying back the 407. That's the solution right now to a right now problem. And I don't know why he keeps ignoring that.
And for weeks, many people have been talking about the Skills Development Fund. Everybody agrees that it's a good fund, but not everybody agrees that David Piccini is a good Minister of Labour. Does he still have your support, or are you going to ask for his resignation?
No, I got to support David. He's worked his back off on this, so created over 700,000 opportunities and 100,000 jobs for people that would never be able to have a job. Our target is to go up to 1 million. And it's ironic because it's all through all different political stripes when in their ridings, and so it's a great thing. We have to be ready for the jobs of the future, and we're training the population of Ontario to be ready for the next generation. No matter if it's large scale nuclear that will create 60, 70,000 new construction.
I'm going to skip over this. I don't know anybody who got money for skills and development and training, and I don't even fully understand the scandal here, but I'm very aware that there is a lot of accusations of cronyism and corruption surrounding that skills and development fund. And again, I don't know who benefits from that. I was unemployed for a long time in the last year. Nobody once ever flagged that for me. Could I have gone in and upgraded my skills for free? Is that how the program works? How does that many billions of dollars get spent?
And this one is for the Premier. Back to that, dressing down that Pete Hoekstra gave David Patterson.
Yeah.
What does it say to you that the person who is ostensibly, baking in Canadian culture does not understand at this moment why you ran that Reagan ad and what it is that Ontarians are trying to achieve in our negotiations with the U.S.?
I guess the ambassador, he must understand it. He's been around for forever. When you have someone attacking your province, attacking your country, constantly saying it's a 51st state, trying to take our auto jobs down to the U.S., taking our manufacturing, life science jobs, trying to take our steel jobs, what do they expect me to do? Sit back and roll over like every other person in the world? I'm going to fight like I've never fought before. I said during the election I'm going to protect people, and I will use every tool in my toolbox to protect the people of Ontario and protect the people of Canada. Like, what does he expect? And the intention wasn't to go poke the president in the eye. My intention was to get a conversation going, wake up the Democrats a little bit down there. And my goodness, it woke them up all right. And they're still talking about it on CNN. But I saw a poll on CNN that Canada is way more popular than the president with the American people. We love Americans. I'll tell you, we don't love President Trump. I'll tell you that. And I think he was in the poll I saw on CNN is minus 60. I don't know, minus 60. I don't know how much lower you can get than minus 60. So why doesn't the president start being nice, play nice in the sandbox to his biggest customer in the entire world, and everything's hunky-dory. So let's get on with it.
I don't even know what to say. You can say protect Ontario until you're blue in the face, and maybe he will. But it's worse now than it was. What he's done has made things worse. What he's done is piss off a lot of people here, too. Every tool in your toolbox is inconveniencing Ontarians greatly. He's going to be the only one in the world that's not going to roll over. Takes another shot at Donald Trump. Oh, I'm not trying to thumb him in the eye or poke him in the eye. But then you just took another shot at the guy. Is it any surprise that we're not making any progress when he keeps doing that? Unbelievable. I mean, again, his heart is in the right place, but Jesus, somebody's got to grab the steering wheel here and get us back on the road, because none of that is helping. None of it. You want to talk about his low poll numbers? Again, you're interfering in U.S. politics, but okay, I don't think that's going to get us very far, though.
Premier Jeffrey Globno, just backing up on that point in this confrontation, you made it sound like it's something that the ambassador has to apologize to your representative in Washington about, but really this was a dressing down. This was screaming, yelling, whatever it is. The reports are in front of a large audience about an ad, an innocuous ad that points out that Ronald Reagan supported free trade that you chose to run. Is this acceptable behavior for a diplomat?
Absolutely unacceptable. I've never heard anything about it. All I'm getting at is I'm not telling him. I'm suggesting that if you get hot-headed one day, call Dave up and say, I apologize. Sorry, got a little heated. So that as simple as that. People get in disagreements. It's unbecoming of an ambassador. I've never heard of this in my entire life.
He's still doing it. It's like he can't control his own mouth. This is why I gave the advice back in the summertime. Doug, you got to leave Donald Trump's name out of your mouth, because you're not making it any better. You don't think Pete Hoekstra is watching that? You don't think Donald Trump is watching that? Hearing you continue to poke the bear, continue to throw in those side jabs and thinking, screw this guy.
Back to the Reagan ad, how do you know the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff saw this particular ad before you moved ahead with airing it?
I was with them. Anyways, everyone's obsessed. Just think of that, 11.4 billion impressions or views. Like, that means every leader in the world saw it, and it's just real. It's a real ad. It worked. It was the most successful ad ever. I don't know any ad that's ever hit 11.4 billion in every single country in the world. Their leadership and population was watching it because it's real.
So while the federal Liberals will not even acknowledge that the Prime Minister saw it, there's coming from Doug Ford. Doug Ford personally showed it to Carney. He personally showed Carney the ad. Does that mean I was right? That secret little meeting that they had at Doug Ford's house last week or the week before? The one where no media was invited? Is that what they were doing? Watching the ad? Was that on the agenda? Interesting stuff, right? Don't let Carney tell you anything other than he approved that ad. There's no way that Doug showed him the ad and Carney said, do not air that. It's going to make it worse. And Doug aired it anyway. It was signed off on and approved by Mark Carney. Friends, tomorrow is a listener DMs episode, and I will catch you right back here tomorrow for that. Have yourselves a great day, and I will leave you with the sounds of Pat James and the whole truth. Hey now.